Welcome to the Mompreneur Life Remix podcast, where you will learn how to remix your mompreneur life so that you can win at work without losing yourself in the process. Hi, my name is Martine Williams, and I am your host and CEO, your Chief Encouragement Officer. And this podcast is your one-stop shop to creating a burnout-proof life and business and elevating your clarity, confidence, and courage. Friends, it's time to say goodbye to being the yes girl and hello to creating healthy boundaries, healthy mindsets, and healthy habits. Your next breakthrough starts here. This is the Mompreneur Life Remix podcast. Let's do this. Hey friends, listen, what do you do when as a mompreneur, you hear crickets versus claps around your business, around your offer? Did you know that 1 in 5 are dealing with loneliness? And what are really like the 4 components of gratitude? We've heard doing gratitude, to help boost mindset, help to boost confidence. But what are the 4 components around gratitude in doing that? How do we build the micro habits? What is emotional intelligence? These are all the things that we're talking about today with my Turquoise Talk guest, Dr. Jenny Wu. So let me tell you a little bit about her. She is a Harvard-trained educator, an EQ researcher, and founder and CEO of Mind, Brain, Emotion. She is passionate about bridging science and practice in human development. She has worked across age groups from toddler years to twilight years and is the creator of award-winning card games and mental health tools to help children and adults build emotional intelligence and communication skills. Her best-selling card game, 52 Essential Conversations and 52 Essential Coping Skills, are used in homes, schools, and workplaces in 50-plus countries. She has been featured in CNBC, Very Well Mind, Forbes, PBS, and Parents. She was such a great interview, just very easy to talk to. And I know you've probably heard the word emotional intelligence, but maybe you're like, what is that? And why do I need it? So great conversation. Put your earbuds in, grab your cup of coffee or whatever you're doing right now and take a listen. So let's dive in. Well, welcome back, friends. I am so excited for today's Turquoise Talk guest. Jenny, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show to share all of your knowledge with the listeners today.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
So tell me just a little bit about you and your family, kind of how you got into the work that you're doing right now too.
Sure. Well, I am the founder CEO of Mind, Brain, Emotion that makes card games for family, but also for work, and really helping everyone to build better relationships, conversation, and really less friction and conflict and more calm right in the midst of chaos that we mompreneurs are in. So as a mom, I have 3 kids. 2 are twins. At one point, it was 3 under 3, right?
Wow.
Lots of chaos. We decided to add a dog, but he's our most loved, treasured mascot of the family. But, Martine, I've sort of always been that little entrepreneur ever since, selling candies and jewelries, DIY stuff on the playground. But somehow never really saw that I was going into this industry, which is more education, because I really started off as a management consultant in the corporate workplace. And so through a lot of twists and turns and detours, here I am.
Yeah. I love that. So a question, I just think stories are so powerful, and there are mompreneurs that are listening today who are in all different stages of their entrepreneurial journey. So some maybe just have this idea and they're in a 9-to-5, maybe that it's killing them, and it's killing their relationships, and they're ready to make a move. And then there are some that have been in entrepreneurship for 10 plus years. So I just think hearing the journey and maybe some lessons that you've learned along your journey, especially since you were in corporate and now you're an entrepreneur, that you could maybe share with listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest myths that people have, and of course, it's sort of fueled by social media and traditional media, is, sort of all or nothing. I got to
Mm-hmm.
get this to work. I have to have, everything lined up. It has to be somewhat near perfection, right? Else I'm
Yeah.
going to fail, crash and burn.
Yep. Yep.
But, having been a mom very much for the most of my life, juggling, meaning
Mm-hmm.
juggling that career or just the other job that I have and the responsibility of being a parent in
Right.
itself, right? Um, you know,
Full-time job. You're always on the clock, right?
exactly. That is not easy. And so you're kind of like, where do I even find the time in this pie?
Yeah.
Non-existent time
Yeah.
for myself, right? Let alone self-care. And then I'm supposed to be doing something, forming my new identity after having kids.
Yeah.
And that was really what I struggled. And I was just kind of like, where do I start? How do I make it different and unique, which is another myth? Because honestly, the market share is huge. There can be lots of, coaches or course creators or, whatnot. And we
Yeah.
can all synergistically kind of really function and help each other out together. So that's another myth, right? So there's this paralysis, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're over analyzing stuff. And so for me, how I sort of felt into it was, well, I decided to take a little bit of time, a few months off from work because I had preemie twins.
Okay.
So one weighed less than 3 pounds and the other
Wow.
one couldn't breathe on his own. And then on top, I had, a 2.5-year-old. So it was
Mm-hmm.
just a lot. And it's really hard to be engaged, for those of you
Mm-hmm.
who are working in general, it's hard to be engaged. And so for me, also logistically, medically, I just, I needed to take some time off. And it was really during those moments of, silence in between the crying and the
Yeah.
appointments that I realized, like I need to do something, but it has to be something that works with the rhythm and the topics of my family. And so that's really when I first went into actually an Etsy business.
Okay.
Just naturally designing shirts that I, couldn't find for my preemie twins that were so little, but then also for twins that were witty and clever and not cheesy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Fun shirts. And so that's
Right.
sort of like how I got into it. And because I was throwing these like major DIY birthday parties that I just loved creating, my friends were like, people would actually buy these things on Etsy. And this
Mm-hmm.
was like, I'm dating myself, but this was way back. And I was like, what's Etsy? Right. And a few
Yeah.
months later, I basically just put up like the stuff that I already
Mm-hmm.
created and had, but other people needed. And so I would encourage moms to, instead of thinking that I need to do this, right, to really look within yourself. Like, what are some of the skill sets, creations, and things that you already have that you can
Mm-hmm.
amplify or replicate? I think scale is also another thing to think about because, like, for example, Etsy is very hands-on custom. Is that really what you want to do as well, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those are some of the initial lifestyle oriented questions that you really need to think about. And, going along sharing my journey, I think then when it was time for my kids to start preschool, my
Mm-hmm.
thought process as sort of this mompreneur, just one that's really, really practical and trying to figure out my identity, right? My
Mm-hmm.
contribution to the
Yep.
world and who I am. I was actually kind of like, well, I suck at parenting. I don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So they're starting a school. I've worked, in capacities, not like school, but in organizations, right?
Right.
What can I do to add value and how can I learn about parenting and even education while I'm doing it and making money?
Mm-hmm.
And so I ended up taking a job at their
Yep.
Montessori preschool. And
Okay.
so I ended up basically finding time by going to work with my kids, dropping them off at school, right? That's like
Mm-hmm.
the most practical thing you could do.
Yeah.
Working and then
Yep.
taking the kids home after I'm done with work. And
Right.
so they had free tuition. I was able to learn on the job and really understand what it's like to raise kids and to nurture and to sort of help them learn, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so those are some of the things that I was trying to basically blend
Mm-hmm.
family life with
Yeah.
identity, career, work life. And so this is going to be, then it's like, okay, so there was some personnel shifts. Things were going down. And so I ended up getting laid off. Okay. And so again, for the moms then not working, you're like, what do I do now? Right.
Right. Yeah.
So I came to that milestone where I'm like, what do I do? And another thing I would encourage people to think is dream big as well, especially, seeing something unfortunate as a blessing of just having that mental space and to pivot and reinvent yourself. So I actually ended up deciding to go back to school. I applied, fortunate enough to actually got into Harvard and a full-time master's program in education. And that kind of aligned with the preschool work I was doing in Montessori. Right. And so then that really launched into a whole new path for me as a student mom. And while I was a student, that was when I juggled and started the side hustle of the business that I'm in right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I mean, the word that just kept coming up while you were talking was just this evolving, right? Like, I think there's such a myth that I think you kind of alluded to it in the beginning where we have to get it right the first time. Like whatever the first idea we have is, we have to have all the details. Everything has to be perfect before we launch it. And instead of just, no, I'm just going to take a step, and it's probably going to evolve. I mean, for the listeners that have been following me for the last 5 or 6 years, you've seen my brand evolve. You've seen my services evolve. You've seen me try different things. And I think as an entrepreneur, that's a really high skill set that we just develop over time. The first time you do it, it's super scary because you're like, I don't know if this is going to work necessarily, but I'm willing to try it. So the other thing I heard you talk about was just you found solutions to your own problems in parenting and in motherhood and, for your kids, cute shirts and all of those things. And you solved for it and created a business around it. So I think sometimes we think, like you said, it's just got to be unique and different and no one's doing it type of thing, when it's really just what are the things that either problems you have solved for yourself that you can now reach back and help someone else with.
Yeah, absolutely. And, tap into your own struggles, right? Problem that you've solved and problem you're in the process. You are motivated in solving, right? So in that motivation, because a lot of us are like, I want to do it, but how do I get this motivation to jumpstart it, right? Well, if it's your own problem, you have this time sensitivity, you need to solve it anyway. You might as well solve it while figuring out how you can help other people with the same problem to address those things. And you're right, earlier you called out just evolving, right? And so that's a key business skill any mompreneur would need to have as a start. I mean, if you think about it, when you create a product or a service, course, it's very iterative, right? That goes hand in hand with evolving. You have to get feedback from your users or non-users and the market. And that is what is driving your evolvement.
Yeah, for sure. And just being willing to do it messy with, imperfect action and done is better than perfect. So just being willing to take messy action before you have all the perfect plan laid out. So for those of you listening, you have this tug in your heart, there's something else you're supposed to be doing and you just don't know what to do. Just take a step, and then it'll get clear. The more action you take, the clearer those steps will become. At least that's what I have found along my journey. So as I was reading a little bit about you and your TED Talk that you did on how to be selfish without feeling selfish, I would love for you just to touch a little bit on that. And I'm sure they're all going to run and go listen to the TED Talk. But that is something really huge for the clients and the moms that I know they're listening is they're burned out, a lot of them, and they feel guilty when they take time for themselves. And for many of them, it's been so long since they've done something fun for themselves or involved themselves on their plan, right? Or in their day-to-day activities that they don't even know what they would want to do for fun. Like they've just totally lost themselves in the journey to success. So tell us a little bit about, or maybe just share us a couple of tips that you talk about in your TED Talk. And then again, they can go listen to the whole thing. But I loved how you said that, how to be selfish without feeling selfish. Hey friend, can I give you permission today? Like for real, your own permission slip. Permission to get clear, to cut out the noise. Mostly the noise that is going on around in your own mind, in your own head. It's just swirling. And you're asking yourself questions like, why am I stuck? Why am I frustrated? Why am I not making progress on my goals? I want to invite you to a free clarity call with me where we're going to dive in and we're going to identify what are the 3 main issues that are keeping you stuck. Number 2, what are the mindsets around those issues that are actually keeping you from solving for those issues? It's not our skill sets, it's our mindsets that keep us stuck and hold us back. And then number 3, identifying what are your next steps. We all have a next step and we have 100% responsibility for those next steps. Your only next step right now is to go to the show notes and book your free clarity call so that we can work through this. I'm believing in you and I cannot wait to see you on our clarity call.
Yeah. And so, for those of you who want to look it up, so how to be self-ish, I put the self and then the hyphen-ish or dash. So I was that mom that you're describing. And probably, honestly, I still deal with mom guilt. It's always going to be there because we're such conscientious, loving moms first before anything else. But, it sort of, it is a mindset switch. And sometimes we feel guilty for even feeling guilty. Like, it's just weird. It's a whole mix. And I teach emotional intelligence at the University of California, Irvine as well. And so it certainly is one of those very big and difficult emotions that especially moms deal with. But how you get around it, right, is again, owning your needs. And these are not even, have to be like, I got to do the girls, trip, or I got to do the traditional moms night out, or I got to, like those big, big things. But I'm talking about, okay, so today, as you're cutting up those fruits, right? Or as you're serving the dinner or whatever, take the first bite yourself first.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because we're always serving other people, right? It's like the kids and the partner, you have the sweetest portion and whatever. I don't want to waste this fresh organic raspberry on myself, right?
Yeah.
It costs money. I'm going to platter it to my kids. No, I dare you, my friends. Take the freshest, juiciest strawberry, the biggest one for yourself. Yeah. That's all we ask. So honestly, it's building these micro habits. And you know what? It's honestly like if you're happier, you're more energized and positive, everybody wins. Everybody. And you have to preserve yourself because you are the anchor of the family. And mood, especially the toxic moods are contagious. So we have to understand we're human beings too. And in order to serve others, we need to help ourselves. So that's how I started to change my mindset, right? To just take 3 minutes to have my cup of tea first before serving my kids. They can wait, mommy this, mommy that, right? The revolving doors of mommy. But your kids are incredibly resilient and they need to learn. I teach this at schools where the kids need to learn how to deal with frustration, right? That's an incredibly important life skill that I teach. They need to learn to be independent. So what you're doing for yourself is actually good for your kids. And, I speak a lot on helicopter parenting, the lawnmower, tiger parenting, all that stuff, right? That is not doing a service for our kids. It's a disservice. And in the process of that, we're driving ourselves nuts, right? So I think the mindset is be a good role model and helping your kids see how they should be treating themselves. Right? How they should be taking care of themselves and giving your kids the life skills, which my kids teach to help them help others. Right. And instead of self-care, teach your kids these skills to wash the dishes and, do the laundry so that they can take care of you. And that's not selfish at all. That is about raising good kids, right?
Right. Yeah.
So everybody wins.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I have two boys and we started them super early on, making lunches and doing the dishwasher and things like that. And I've always thought their wives are going to thank me one day because I've raised them to help, right? And
Yeah.
and it did come from the mindset shift. While I probably can do it all, I shouldn't be doing it all. And it's opportunities for them to serve. It's opportunities for me to be served. And I do think it's just, it's against culture a little bit. I feel like it's becoming more acceptable, but it's really also maybe what was modeled for you as you were the daughter, being raised and what you saw your mom doing. And so I think, again, it's just slowing down long enough to think through, okay, what is the life that I'm trying to create for myself and for my kids, and how do I want to raise them to be? Doesn't mean what your mom did was wrong or bad. It just may not be how you want your parenting and how you want your family dynamic to look like, but just slowing down long enough to think through those things for yourself. And I do think the guilt is always lingering because we do care, right? We care so much about our families and we care so much about our businesses. But I love that. So we'll put the link to the TED Talk in the show notes so people can go and watch the whole thing. But you mentioned emotional intelligence, and I would love for you just to define that for the listeners, for those that maybe have heard that before and they're just not sure what that is. And then why is that important for people to have?
Yeah. Well, emotional intelligence is really about being intelligent with emotions, meaning that knowing how to make it work for you and not against you. And
Okay.
so it's about our ability to recognize the emotions within ourselves, as well as tuning into those around us, whether it's our kids, our business partners, our clients, all that great stuff. And knowing how to manage that and how to influence those emotions. And why that it's important, especially for us, is, well, let's say we just talked about the mom guilt, right? That's a huge emotion. We're shouldering that. And some of us are sort of pressing that guilt down, that shame down at all times. But at the same time, you're also fielding other emotions that you have and the emotions that, your kids are dumping on you. So
Right.
we're essentially the emotional dumpsters. And, many of us are so in tune with others' emotion. We're very empathetic, right?
Yeah.
But that is not emotionally intelligent, because the other part of that formula that is about what do you actually do with those emotions?
Yeah.
How do you manage them? How do you even partition if your kid had a bad day? You feel so bad for them, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to go back to nurturing your business or doing other things, right? You're not going to drop everything. So how do you manage those emotions so that you're not getting swept away by all those craziness of emotions inside of you and around you? And so we also know that as an entrepreneur, the road could be incredibly scary and lonely, right?
Yeah.
So during the tough times when you are hearing crickets instead of claps, right? You have this imposter syndrome, this self-doubt, and you're like, could I go on? Should I go on? Will anybody even care?
Right. Yes. It's what do I do matter? Yes.
Yes. The mattering. Does it even all matter? Where am I going with this, right? That is like the darkest times where emotional intelligence kicks in. You need it so badly to stay resilient and be your own cheerleader and keep going. But I do also have to say it's also about self-awareness. So being aware of when you need to throw in the towel, right? When it's time to evolve. So the awareness piece goes hand in hand with the management piece. And that's what emotional intelligence is all about.
Yeah. Yeah. What I find with my clients, a lot of them is the avoidance of the emotion. Like we just, we don't want to feel it. So we, like you said, that we just kind of push it down or brush it under the rug to deal with another day. And that just compounds and compounds, which also leads to that burnout because all these emotions are just stuffed versus processed and managed. So what would be a couple of things you could share with them to manage their emotions? Like, I just don't think we're taught this enough, Jenny. I really don't think it's talked about enough. I think I don't know. I don't know. I remember growing up, I don't remember being taught how to emotionally regulate or emotionally, manage my emotions and have an emotional intelligence. So I'm thankful we're having these conversations more because I do think it's super important for us to have that information. So what could you share with the listeners today who are like, okay, this is new, but I do have some emotions that I need to manage. Like I want to have that resilience, right? As the entrepreneur, when when you're hearing crickets versus claps, or the mom guilt, which is so heavy. Like, how do you manage that?
Yeah, and you are so right, Martine. We're not taught how to really adaptively cope and manage with these. And if anything, we are taught that we should not be screaming, right? These are how good girls, good moms should look like, right? So,
Yeah.
so what I do is teaching, but also like helping people unlearn, right? The things, the self-talks that are no longer serving them. So it's learning and unlearning just as important.
Yeah.
And, one vigil I like to give people to start shifting, how you're seeing your ways of approaching behavior is to imagine that, all those emotions you've been suppressing, it's equivalent to you literally just pushing down this buoy like in the water. You're keeping it down so it does not surface, right? That you don't blow up. But at some point, you are going to get tired and you're one arm short. You don't have enough attention span and focus and even motivation to do other things because you're constantly trying to suppress that.
Yeah.
And that requires cognitive, load, energy, emotional load on top of it, and this whole mental load that we talk about so much for moms. So to get around it, it is a process, but it's about owning the emotions you're feeling. You have a right to feel such way, even if you feel selfish about it, right?
Yeah.
Unreasonable, but that is the lens in which you see the world. Just like your 3-year-old is throwing that tantrum on the ground, they are, this, I'm going to say that they are entitled to feel that way, right? Because that is their perspective, their viewpoint, their snapshot. They're just trying to do the best they can do with the resources limited that they have. Same with us.
Right.
So it's giving that same compassion to ourselves and say, you know what? I feel like crap and this happened. It doesn't even have to be a big deal, but it really just takes me off. And it's also because I've had people pressing on these big old glowing red buttons on me all day. And that's why I'm feeling this way with this certain other incident, right? So I would encourage people to talk about it. You can talk about it with your friend, with your partner, in a very, non-confrontation way. And that's something I teach. But also, you know what? Write about it in your journal. Just unload it. And there's such thing as, that I've heard my friend have done during the toughest time is you literally like write whatever unfiltered on that paper and you burn it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It feels good just to get it out. Yeah.
Yes. Get it out. Nobody has to see it, but just that there's so much research done on, the benefits of writing. And that in some sense, it's also being mindful and allowing yourself to communicate that, right? To show that, to accept that. So self-acceptance is also really important because then you're decluttering yourself psychologically. And that's something, like lately, especially like the media seem to be interested and it's just decluttering yourself, not just your health, but your load psychologically so that you have the mental space to even think about, how to start your business and what the next steps might be.
Yeah. 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 I actually just did a webinar. We were talking about mental clutter and just, this decision fatigue and how real it is for entrepreneurs. And especially if you're, you have to make decisions in your business and as a mom and as a wife, and then yet you still have these unregulated emotions as well. And you're pushing those down. That's a decision, right? That I'm going to deal with that later. And so you just have all of this load happening on your brain, yet you're still expecting this high performance of yourself. And it's just really interesting how the pressure that we put on ourselves, right? To do it all and to do it all perfectly. And I'll deal with that one other day. I talk about the one day strategy. You know, one day I'll get back to that. One day I'm going to deal with that trauma, or one day I'm going to deal with those emotions. Well, every day you don't deal with it, it's just like a mound that is building underneath this rug that you just keep sweeping it under. And part of it, I think, is because we just don't want to deal with it. We don't want to feel it. So we're like, I'm just going to ignore it versus feeling it. And feeling is healing. And that's a journey that I've personally been on too. And so I just see it all the time. So I really appreciate this honest conversation about it. And I know the listeners will too. So you did mention journaling. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about was just this idea of boosting your mood and your mindset with gratitude. And a lot of people do a gratitude journal, or they're doing some journaling. So what have you seen, or do you talk about this with your clients or the people that you work with, and how this can help?
Yeah. It's so funny. So I actually have a card deck called the 52 Essential Gratitude Attitude.
Oh, I love that.
And and it stemmed from my own experience with my family, with my kids, but also parents had asked me to provide some expert opinions and thoughts around, well, how do you help your kids express gratitude? And how do you do that as a family? So, the thing is, like, we talk about gratitude journaling, right? So that is a very solo oriented activity. And where I see and studies the most benefit to really maximize this gratitude practice is that to make it solo and social. And so how cool would it be, in your journal, you may write, I'm grateful for my family, or I'm grateful for my kids who did this, right? But to be able to socially express that to the person you're grateful for is incredibly powerful, just on both ends. And gratitude is one of those emotions that is incredibly contagious as well. And so for my practice, for the cards, each card has a prompt, and it's not just, what are you grateful for today? We can only ask that to ourselves and our kids before the eyes start rolling, right? But it's sort of, each prompt is really focused around the 4 framework competencies of emotional intelligence. So gratitude within yourself, building that self-awareness, versus gratitude in something that you've self-managed, right? Problem solved, maybe a certain situation, versus gratitude for the environment, for the nature, for your surrounding, your community. And then the 4th component is gratitude for the meaningful relationships, how those have impacted you personally, professionally in your life. So those are sort of the categorization of the prompts. And you would do that really as a family and cross-generationally. So with the grandparents during Thanksgiving as well, and everybody talk about it. And there's also an affirmation, right? To really kind of positive emotions help us, the lingering of that help us build good habits. So to help us really magnify that positive emotion, but to take it deeper, to really derive those like meaning of what we're doing, our reflections. And then it's also got a quote to sort of talk about some more and ponder upon, to broaden our perspective, right? We talked about the tunnel vision of feelings we're feeling, but also to really understand the lens that our kids, our family members are wearing. And so that's what I do for gratitude practice. And I've just realized, through research and through field testing, that's how you get the most out of, say, 5 minutes of your time.
Yeah. I love that. So where can people find out more about all these amazing deck cards, or the cards that you have for that, or any other? I can see you have some of those things behind you. So for those that are listening that just want to find more about you and what the work that you do, and maybe grab a couple of these products that you offer, where can they go to find that?
Sure. Well, nowadays, I guess the easiest place is Amazon. So Amazon, Walmart, and you can go to my website, which is mindbrainemotion.com. And, I've also got tons of free resources. One of the deck, we're actually going to make it free for everyone, which is the 52 essential inclusion skills. So in the true form of accessibility, talking about chronic illnesses and neurodivergence and, all that stuff that heavy stuff that we need to deal with, right? With
Yeah.
life and also our
Yeah.
kids. But also, there's tons of life skills videos that I've created actually with my kids, made for kids by kids, that people can access on YouTube, which is at Mind, Brain, Emotion, to get your kids to know how to take care of you and the house, right? That's important. So you can be self-ish. And you can also find my articles on CNBC. I would say the first one, they did a feature of me about my side hustle and my business, and it completely went viral, trending #1 on Apple News and all that crazy stuff. My friends were like texting me like, wait, this is you. What? But going with our message, right, that what we've been talking about is one step at a time. It's the messiness. So after that, I actually told them, I said, you know what? I want to write an article in my words, and it's going to be about 3 biggest mistakes I made in my side hustle. And so that's also out. So I will continue to really talk about, the good, bad, and ugly, the reality sides of being an entrepreneur. So feel free to check those out.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. That's what makes you relatable. And that's what moms need to hear. They need to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? So I'm thankful that they have that resource. So as we wrap up, if there was one thing you could leave our listeners with today, knowing they're mompreneurs and some of the things that you've experienced as a mompreneur, what kind of encouragement could you leave them with?
Yeah, I think community is huge. Having some kind of support, emotionally, logistically, things around that. That's something, I just realized, I was just interviewed for this latest Gallup report that 1 in 5 Americans are dealing with significant loneliness, on a daily basis, right? And loneliness kills. And, the U.S. Surgeon General certainly created a recent report advisory that's warning that today's parents are incredibly stressed. And so the more you can have a community, have a friend, to share the emotions, right, you're dealing with, the struggles that you have, I feel like the better and easier it is for you to take action. So that would be my words of wisdom.
I love it. I love it. Solopreneurship is hard. Entrepreneurship is hard. Entrepreneurship alone is even harder. So I totally agree with that. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. We literally could have talked for another hour. So maybe I'll have you come back on and we'll do another episode. But I really appreciate you coming on to the show today and sharing your wisdom with all the listeners.
Yeah, what a delight. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, friends, we'll catch you on the next episode. Well, that's a wrap, friends. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. I really hope it met you right where you are and gave you some encouragement for your day. Could you do me the biggest favor and leave me a rating and review? Seriously, it's the best way for you to support the show. And while you're there, be sure to follow the show so you never miss an episode. Thanks again. And until next time, I am believing in you always.